Today on Filtered, Meta hits the brakes once again on its Metaverse plays. A huge new study says that it's sleep that determines how many steps you take each day, how often you go to the gym. It's not motivation or self-discipline. CBS tries to be the news and becomes the joke this week. Jerome Powell, head of the Federal Reserve, gets backed by most of the world's central bankers. And finally, why the so-called radicals warning about fascism as long ago as 5 or 6 years ago weren't exaggerating. They were just early. All that and more today on Filtered.
Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker.
Hi, and welcome. Thanks for joining me today. It is Tuesday, January 13th, 2026. Glad to be with you here. A very rare, unusual, cloudy, almost rainy day here in South Florida, but good to be with you. And you need some rainy, cloudy days to appreciate the sunny days. Life is about contrast. Variety is indeed the spice of life. Let's check in as we always do at the beginning of the show with yesterday's market. S&P 500 closed at 6,977. That's up 0.16%. The NASDAQ Composite closed at 23,733. That is up 0.26%. Interesting, but frankly irrelevant compared to the long term. Here at Filtered, we like to keep a long-term perspective on investment, wealth building. And over the long term, the last 25 years, the S&P 500 has gone up on average 8.32% per year. The NASDAQ 100 has gone up on average 9.09% a year. So please keep that in mind. Okay, let's hop right into the top story of the day, top technology story of the day. By the way, if you're new to this show, my name is TJ Walker. This is Filtered. We look at the top business, technology, and culture stories of the day and filter it through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills. So Meta is once again hitting the brake on various aspects of the metaverse. They have announced that there's going to be a cutback, 10% cutback in Meta's reality lab. This is where Mark Zuckerberg's vision for the metaverse was being researched, played out, invested in. Billions, tens of billions of dollars were spent. Didn't add up to much. Kind of a big loser. Investors lost patience. Meta has pivoted. And what's the big impact? Well, it's not huge. Out of all the employees at Meta, there are about 15,000 people working in their reality labs, which is still huge, obviously. 10% are going to get cut. So 1,500 employees are going to get cut. Now, Metaverse announces or has basically disclosed that they're losing $60 billion from this metaverse thing since 2020. I well remember it was just, I guess, 3 years ago at the South by Southwest conference. Mark Zuckerberg was there. Everybody and anybody was there talking about metaverse. And then all of a sudden, poof, it's as if it never existed. Investors are pressuring Meta to curb its virtual reality spending. Now, they have had some successes. Let's be fair. The Ray-Ban Meta glasses have sold 2 million units. And every time I go to the mall, I stop by the local lens crafters and I ask the sales attendants, what do people think of these Meta glasses? And uniformly, they are quite positive. They said, we're sold out. People seem to like them. Nobody's returning them. So I'm not ready to chuck up that one as some kind of a failure. And in fact, the wearables division of this reality lab is being spared. They are not going to see cuts. Okay, let's put this in the big perspective. Meta is worth $1.84 trillion. So for them to lose $60 billion is like you or me leaving a nickel on the floor and we were too lazy to bend over to pick it up. It's happened. So it's not anything that's going to destroy the company. What do I think is the real message? Why do I want to put a spotlight on this today? because this show is not just about news and technology news, but it's also about personal development. And I think that, believe it or not, as much as he is maligned, mocked, made fun of, Mark Zuckerberg, there are lessons to learn here. He is still not afraid to make big bets. Now, he is well past the stage where he could say, look, I'm really rich. I can go to my giant island in Hawaii and just do nothing but sit back, relax, fun, drink, party, buy stuff, be a philanthropist, sleep till noon every day. He could have done that a decade ago. And yet he's in there toiling away every day, working harder. There's something about that that's admirable. Yes, I agree with many of the critics who say that Facebook is essentially tearing apart the world with its algorithms. It is giving superpowers to anger, aggression, dissension, and engagement that foments hatred. So there are many, many things to dislike about Facebook. That's not going to be the topic of this segment today. And believe me, we've talked about that before. We will talk about it again. I'm not here to whitewash Mark Zuckerberg's reputation. I do think there are still things we can all learn from him, which is it is important to take big bets in your career consistently. Now, when Mark Zuckerberg takes a big bet now, it's not imperiling his mansion or his second mansion or his third mansion or his first island or his second island or his third island. So it's not as risky as when he quit Harvard, which was considered a pretty risky thing back in the day, to do a startup. That was a big risk he took, and it paid off. Now, we can't all just at age 18 or 19 do a startup, drop out of college, and become a billionaire. In fact, virtually nobody does that. But we can all continue to make bets, a bet on the future, a bet on some product or some service, and then work for it like crazy. And invest, if not our money, our time. And Mark Zuckerberg is continuing to do this. Other lessons I think are important here to realize. Nobody's a genius in everything. Now, Mark Zuckerberg did figure out this whole social media game. Let's not forget, there were 12 other venture-backed social media platforms. Friendster, remember that, MySpace. There were 12 other venture-backed social media platforms before Facebook really gained traction. He beat them all. So you've got to give him credit for that as a business person. But just because you're good at one thing, just because you've had one huge success, doesn't mean you're a genius in every other aspect of life or even every other aspect of business. Just ask Elon Musk. One second though, don't ask Musk, because he will say he's a genius on everything. But you look at how he has virtually destroyed X, which he likes to call it, so destroying Twitter. You look at how he virtually destroyed the United States government. So no, being a really good business person and becoming a billionaire means one thing. It means you're good at that particular business and selling enough products and services to create a multi-billion-dollar company where you get some percentage of it and you end up a billionaire. That is what it means. And it is pretty significant, but too many people give this halo effect. Oh, you're good here, you must be good here. Now, I'm not privy to the inner workings of Facebook. I don't know how many people within Facebook were telling Mark Zuckerberg, time out, this Meta thing, maybe it's not going to be real. Maybe we shouldn't change the name of Facebook to Meta, because maybe that whole thing is a bunch of BS. Presumably somebody did tell him that. And maybe he listened, maybe he didn't, but he made the decision that they were going to pivot everything to the so-called metaverse. Now, not so much. And the news again, 1,500 people will be fired from their reality labs, which is where they house these various projects related to the metaverse. Other things I want you to really keep in mind is that The most successful people in the world, I find, are typically not necessarily the smartest or the highest IQ, although there's no doubt that Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Elon Musk have high IQs. You can call them idiots for other reasons, but let's not kid ourselves. They're smart, they have high IQs, and they do work hard. But it doesn't mean they're going to be good at everything. What I do find among really successful people is they're not afraid to make big bets, to craft a clear vision and say, this is the future, and I'm going to deploy every asset I have and all of my time, even if it's 20 hours a day, to make it work. Elon Musk essentially did that with Tesla. I mean, he came this close to being personally bankrupt and financially ruined. I mean, he came that close many times. He's been willing to place big bets, whether it's for Tesla, whether it's for SpaceX. Mark Zuckerberg gambled a lot dropping out of school to start Facebook, but that one paid off. He's continuing to place big bets. He doesn't want to be someone like, and I'll just toss this name out here, Mike Bloomberg. Now, I have a lot of respect for Mike Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City, and also the guy who created all the Bloomberg terminals. Mike Bloomberg created his business, this terminal business, sort of this niche media data business, kept it private, didn't have to go public. And he's content with being the richest man in New York City. At last estimate, Mike Bloomberg's personal wealth is about $37 billion. But in the world of Silicon Valley, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, the Elon Musk of the world, that's chump change. I mean, that's practically what their valet is worth. I'm exaggerating, but only slightly. So Mike Bloomberg, I'm not saying he's not ambitious. He tried to run for president. That's pretty ambitious. But he didn't keep saying, I have to create my media company bigger and bigger and bigger and take over all of Hollywood and gobble up every related business. No, he didn't do that. Mark Zuckerberg did. There's something about that is both distasteful and admirable. And you got to figure out which parts you admire and which parts you think are dangerous to society, because they're sometimes related. But I do give him credit for going all in, trying something, and essentially admitting, hey, I failed. Now, granted, he's got some motivation to admit he failed because he has shareholders saying, we want to see some results from these tens of billions of dollars being invested in the metaverse. Otherwise, knock it off. He's been hearing that message for a while, and it seems like he's had to listen again with this most recent announcement that he's firing another 1,500 people from the Metaverse unit.
Like what you heard? Don't let the algorithm bury us. Subscribe now at substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess. Want direct access to me live? Want to unlock bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes takes, and full access to my premium courses? Then become a member today. Just go to tjwalker.com/members and choose your preferred platform, YouTube, Patreon, whatever works for you. This isn't just another subscription. It's a full access pass to the tools, coaching, and content that can transform your communication and career. tjwalker.com/members. I'll see you inside.
Are you looking for more motivation to take 10 or 15,000 steps a day or get to the gym earlier? Well, it turns out you may be looking in the wrong place. There's a new study by an organization called Mind Body Green. They researched 71,000 adults across 244 regions using wearables and sleep sensor technology, 28 million days of data total. And they found some interesting findings. And it kind of flips a lot of the logic many of us operate under. Many people, and I've been guilty of this before, thinking, wow, if I just exercise more today, I'll get better sleep. And that'll cause this positive windmill of positive effects in my life. What they found was exercising more didn't do that much to help improve sleep. It was the reverse. It was getting more sleep had a profound impact on how much you exercise. So here's the uncomfortable truth for hustle culture. You're not lazy, you're tired if you're not doing as much as you thought. When sleep quality improved, people took hundreds and hundreds of more steps each day without trying any harder. So they didn't have to sort of get up and psych themselves up and look at a vision board. I'm going to walk more today. Simply by getting more sleep, you walk more, you get to the gym more frequently. So the target sleep was 7 to 9 hours. And most serious sleep experts I know of think really about 8.5 hours is optimal for most human beings. Yes, there's an extraordinarily rare outlier that can get along fine with 5 or 6 hours. But most of us humans, for most of human history, if you put us in conditions where we didn't have lots of artificial light and TV and Netflix and TikTok and Instagram and lots of distractions and get rid of the alarm clocks, we'd actually sleep about 8.5 hours a day to feel fully rested. What they found was only 12.9% of people were hitting their goals of getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep and at least 8,000 steps. Now, you may have heard that you need to get 10,000 steps a day. It turns out there's no real scientific evidence saying that's the magic number. That came from a marketing gimmick for a Japanese company many decades ago to sell odometers. So it's not that 10,000 is magical, but most doctors would say if you're walking fewer than 8,000 steps, you really run the risk of having a sedentary lifestyle, and that increases the chances of heart attack, stroke, hypertension, diabetes. All sorts of things happen if you just are sitting all day long, which I have a hard time imagining how it's even possible to get fewer than 8,000 steps. I strive for 15,000 steps. I would say in the last 2 weeks, I've averaged more like 18,000. And I'm not saying that's a magic number. So here's what they found in the survey. Of 71,000 adults, only 12.9% were getting enough sleep and enough steps, if you define 8,000 steps as the minimum needed. Now, 17% got less than 7 hours of sleep, which is not a good thing. Even if you say you don't need more or you can function well, you really can't. And 17% had both less than 7 hours sleep and less than 5,000 steps. So the more sleep you got, generally, the more steps you got. And that's counter to a lot of what our culture tells us. Our culture says, set the alarm for 5 a.m., get to the gym by 5:30, do an hour and a half workout before showing up at the office at 7:01. Hustle, 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 hustle. It turns out that works really well till about this Thursday, which is January 15th. That's usually the time when people give up on their New Year's resolutions. That's why gyms are completely packed for the last 2 weeks and maybe for one more week. And then, wait another month or two and wow, there's going to be no weight on the treadmill because everybody's too tired. That really strong willpower and self-discipline can work for a couple of weeks. And then your body's too tired. Your body says no. So the real message here is if you want to exercise more, and I would hope, unless you're already in perfect condition, you do want to exercise. I know I want to exercise more, and I already exercise a lot. If you want to exercise more, the real magic is you've got to do everything you can to improve the quality of your sleep and the length of your sleep. And there's all sorts of problems. You've heard me talk about it before, but I'll just cover a few basics again. Screens are, I think, perhaps the biggest disaster for most, but artificial light and screens. The standard mantra among sleep experts is turn off all screens at least an hour before you go to sleep, ideally 2 hours before you want to go to sleep. It lets your brain unwind. It gets you less agitated. You don't hear some commentator like me or anyone else saying something to get you angry. So read a good book. I'm reading a novel right now for my last hour of the night, and it's relaxing. So read a book, get away from the screens. Some things are institutional, which you just can't change much. Teens biologically are programmed to stay up later and sleep later, and yet school system after school system, at least in America, wants them to start school at 7:30 in the morning, which is very contrary to their biology. It's hard to change much about that, but you can change your screen time. You can change your bedtime. You can, in fact, go to bed early. You don't have to watch that next edition or that next episode of Stranger Things or Game of Thrones or anything else. You can watch one and maybe around 8:30 or so, start reading a book. Turn off as many lights as possible. Put your phone in another room. Now, I realize at some level I may sound like an old man. Oh, guess what? I am an old man, but I'm an old man who values sleep. And I'm an old man who wants to live another 40 years, in part because of good exercise and sleep habits. Doesn't guarantee I will. I would urge you to at least experiment with the idea of not bringing your cell phone into your bedroom. I do not bring my cell phone into my bedroom. The only exception is if I'm traveling in a motel room, doesn't have a suite as a part of it. But at home, leave it in another room. And you know how I wake up? Well, I wake up because I am fully rested. On the rare occasion when I need to wake up at a certain time to catch an airplane at 4:30 in the morning, then I will use an alarm clock, a good old-fashioned alarm clock, digital, looks the same as it did 40 years ago, and you can buy them online for less than $10. You don't really need your phone. Small sleep gains compound. That's the other thing this study found, is when you start to get more sleep, when you start to get better sleep, you walk more, you exercise more. It's easier to have the self-discipline to actually eat better food. So please keep this in mind. It's the energy that precedes discipline. You simply have it backwards if you think, let me focus on going to an Anthony Robbins 3-day conference, and they can be great. I'm not anti that. But if you think the solution is if I just go to an Anthony Robbins workshop, or I just read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, or if I just motivate myself through meditation, then I'll have more energy to walk more and exercise more. No. Those things might all be nice, but the key is simply giving your body more energy. And the only way you can do that is through sleep, plus eating quality food. So you want to walk more? You want to exercise more? You want to hit the gym more? All great goals, but the main goal you need before that is go to bed earlier. Get a good night's sleep.
Want to communicate like a pro? Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Millions have already transformed their speaking skills. Why not you? This show doesn't run on a lot of corporate sponsorships or big media backing. It runs on caffeine and your support. If you like what you're hearing and want to say thanks, you can buy me a coffee. Really. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. It's quick, it's easy, and yes, it helps cover editing, hosting, and staying relatively ad-free for as long as possible. Buymeacoffee.com/TJ Walker. Your $3.95 makes a real difference. Want live coaching from me? Bonus episodes? Full course access? It's all waiting at tjwalker.com/members. Join now.
CBS News wants to be in the news, not just reporting the news. That's according to reporting from the New York Times about the newly revamped CBS under the helm of Bari Weiss. She's essentially put out memos, told her staff, we want to be the news. They had a big 10-day promotion around the country to sort of showcase their new anchor and get more attention. It didn't go very well. So here's what happened. They became the butt of jokes. Now, Tony Dokapil is their new anchor, and I have nothing against him. The guy has world-class hair. He's really good at showing his full head of hair. And am I jealous? Maybe more than a little. Okay. But the idea that Americans are suddenly going to flock to the long-time third place CBS News to get their news just seems anachronistic at many levels. And it just seems like they're fighting old battles. There's something about the whole positioning of Bari Weiss, and it seems to be very 2020, if everything is about anti-woke and don't do anything that anyone would think is liberal or progressive or that a Democrat might like, seems to be their mantra. And as I mentioned before on this show, for news consumers like that, they already have Fox News Channel. They don't need another Fox News channel. Just ask Newsmax and OAN and some of the other Me Too networks. So she put out a memo saying that every night we have to do something with viral potential. Okay, I mean, that's great if you are somebody like me, a small-time, independent YouTube, TikTok producer, a small, tiny little media organization. But when you're CBS News, and people really look to you for credibility, for fact-based journalism, for traditional, serious journalism, just trying to make the news seems a little silly. But she put out messages doing this. So what happened in their first full week? The teleprompter broke. And hey, that's happened to me before. But if my teleprompter breaks, it doesn't really bother that many people because I don't have 3 million people watching me, or in the case of CBS News, maybe 1.5 million people. Now, here's what's happened. Apparently, the teleprompter issue in the last week is the anchor was reading it, and then he's realizing, there's a couple sentences here that I just read 10 seconds ago. What's going on? And he kind of stopped and asked his producer on the ear. It was wildly awkward. Did not look professional. It was not the seamless product you expect from a huge, big budget staff and team for a 19.5-minute newscast, which is what a 30-minute newscast really is once you strip out the commercials. Why were there duplicates? Well, apparently Bari Weiss and some of her minions were rewriting the script seconds before it went on the air. And when you are constantly rewriting things, changing things, revising things, filtering it through your own censoring to make sure it's not woke, mistakes happen. Now, the funny thing, at least if you're not a CBS shareholder or executive or Bari Weiss, is that CBS was roundly mocked during the Golden Globes for their shoddy practices. Guess where the Golden Globes was aired this year? That's right, it was on the CBS network. So I happen to really like the comedian Nikki Glaser, who was the host. And here's a couple of things she said that got a lot of laughs. She said the award for most editing, which is kind of like an award, best editing for movies and TV shows, is similar to what a Golden Globes award gives. But she said the award for most editing goes to CBS News, a reference obviously to Bari Weiss striking down stories that were ready to go on CBS News because it might hurt Donald Trump's feelings. And she said it happened on America's newest place to CBS News. So it's the letter CBS is the official name of the network. But the way she said it, CBS as in bull news. So it was a clever burn in the eyes of most people, and I'm sure it stung. This is not a smooth transition for the people at CBS News. Truthfully, I don't know how you make something like CBS News relevant. I've been a news junkie my whole life. Growing up, I watched CBS News. I believe it was the dominant station in my household, we watched the CBS local news, WBTV News in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then right after that was the CBS Evening News. Walter Cronkite for much of my childhood, and then Dan Rather, starting in, I believe, in about 1982. So, and CBS's 60 Minutes was a staple in my household, as well as most households. That was seen as the gold standard of journalism. Not anymore. And it should be pointed out that even though CBS Evening News, their ratings on a typical weeknight have been down, 60 Minutes ratings were still really, really good until recently. And it seems as though they're trying to tarnish that brand, do everything they can to make it seem irrelevant, to make it seem like their reporters are auditioning to get on Fox News or their own right-wing podcast. That's a sad thing to say for any so-called news organization. Have you watched CBS News in a while? If so, let me know. What do you think of them? Again, I'm consuming news all day long. Every once in a while, something will come to me from an aggregator, because I do look at various aggregators like Google News and the Drudge Report. So every once in a while, some story from CBS will come across my path, but I certainly don't watch it with any regularity. Do you? If so, post a comment. Let me know what you think of CBS News right now.
Filtered is brought to you by the following. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books, covering everything from public speaking to media interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Thanks for listening. If you like today's episode, you'll love my online courses at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Check them out now and level up your skills.
We are back. Thanks so much for joining me. Okay, this controversy is not going away. Jerome Powell is being targeted by the President of the United States, Powell being the Chairman of the Federal Reserve, and he's not being a good boy, according to Donald Trump. And so Trump does what he now does with anyone, whether you're a foreign leader or a domestic adversary. He just alleges you're corrupt, a criminal, that he's investigating, and he's going to essentially take you out. That's the implication. Well, Jerome Powell is fighting back, and he is striking a lot of commentators as sort of a picture of rectitude in Washington, D.C., that rare political figure willing to actually risk reputation, risk the wrath of Trump, and stand up for traditional American values, standing up for the independence of the Fed, standing up for essentially the entire framework of the modern worldwide economy. Now, Jason Furman is someone who weighed in on this with a major op-ed piece in the New York Times. He's former chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors back in the 2013 to 17 range. He was President Obama's chief economist, so you can discount him. If anyone who's ever dealt with Obama makes someone illegitimate, you can discount him. But he really hit hard on what's going on with this Trump administration, trying to reduce Powell. But he's not the only one. There's now sort of a bipartisan, barely, but a bipartisan consensus that what Trump is trying to do is going too far. Senator Thom Tillis, the Republican of North Carolina, has said he is not going to vote for anyone to be a new chair of the Fed if this whole basically fake witch hunt doesn't go away. Let's not forget, Chairman Powell's term is supposed to expire in a few months anyway. I mean, his term ends in May. But Trump's new mantra in Washington is you do everything I want when I want. If I say jump now, you don't wait 2 seconds to jump, you jump right now. So waiting his turn, because it will be President Trump's turn to pick a chair of the Federal Reserve in May of this year, 2026. That will be his time to fire this guy, not necessarily fire, to pick his new guy and to get rid of Powell, because my God, what fool, what imbecile, what crazy person actually picked Powell to be chairman of the Federal Reserve? That person must have been crazy, right? Well, guess what? The person who selected Jerome Powell to be the head of the Federal Reserve was, of course, Donald Trump during his first term. But this is striking a nerve with a lot of people. Now, it is true, markets didn't instantly plummet to send a negative message. There was a lot of sort of shrugging. But other people are weighing in. Many central bankers essentially endorsed this following message: we stand in full solidarity with the Federal Reserve System. So you're seeing in Great Britain, you're seeing in Europe, other heads of comparable positions or Fed say, oh, we're with Chairman Powell on this. You're seeing a few other Republican voices in the Senate. They're not attacking Trump directly, but they're saying essentially, hold on here. We're not sure we're really in favor of this. And I do give credit to Thom Tillis. Now, Thom Tillis, you may say, well, gosh, he's courageous. I wonder why. It's because he's not running for re-election. Thom Tillis spoke out once too often against Trump in the past and was so bloodied and bullied and badgered and threatened with primary opposition and funding. He finally said, what do I need this for? So Thom Tillis is not running for re-election. So he has a lot more freedom than most Republicans who presumably are running for re-election. But here's the other thing he said. If there were any remaining doubt, he was referring to the idea that Trump just makes up criminal charges against people he doesn't like and is trying to manipulate the Fed for political reasons. There should now be none. So again, this is a Republican and conservative. You might not love Thom Tillis, but if you're intellectually honest, you can't say he's a part of the radical left. He's not a part of an extremist terrorist organization. He's not AOC's best friend. He's a conservative Republican from North Carolina, my home state, where I lived most of my formative years from age 5 to 22. And I can tell you, that's not a state full of firebrand liberals, okay? So when Thom Tillis is saying the president of the United States is playing politics with the Federal Reserve, it's time for a lot more people to take this seriously. Thomas Friedman of the New York Times also weighed in on this and basically calling this an unmitigated disaster if this happens. Because we really are seeing the crumblings of the very foundations of not just democracy, but capitalism. A part of what capitalism needs is an independent Fed. Otherwise, if you let a politician do what's in their best interest, they're always going to pick the short-term interest. Donald Trump, in case you hadn't noticed, is somebody who does think about what's in his own best short-term interest. And right now, he's worried about the Democrats winning the 2026 elections, specifically the House, but it's possible they even win the Senate. He's worried about being impeached, rightfully so, if you routinely, some would argue daily, commit impeachable offenses. So he's concerned about that. So he wants to do everything he can to create a favorable economic climate so that voters are happy with his tenure. So in Donald Trump's mind, if we could all of a sudden reduce interest rates by, let's say, half, and everyone can get a cheap mortgage, and everyone can buy a car, short term, the economy might really take off between now and, say, Election Day. Long term, that could create massive inflation. And what Chairman Powell did say Sunday night in the video he released to the world was he's going to continue focused on his dual mandate. The dual mandate of the Federal Reserve is to try to keep inflation low at about 2% and to try to keep unemployment low at about 4%. They have to focus on both. The job of the Federal Reserve is not to make the President of the United States look good. And there's often been tensions between Fed chairs and presidents, and some, like Nixon, try to get their fingers on things. But this is the first time we've seen something this downright thuggish toward a chairman of the Federal Reserve, where a president just says, I want you to lower interest rates. Oh, and if you don't, I'm just going to order my Department of Justice to claim that you're a criminal and to start harassing you, indict you, try you, perhaps put you in prison. That has never in the history of this country happened before. And it is happening right now. And it is a massive, massive problem. It's certainly a massive problem if you're a Democrat, a centrist, a liberal, because all of those people want a strong economy. But it's an even bigger problem if you consider yourself a conservative or even a libertarian. The last thing you want is to give politicians thinking about only themselves power to completely destroy the whole economy. And that's not my opinion. That is the opinion of serious economists from across the political spectrum. If you doubt me, look at Argentina. Look at Turkey. Look at countries where their political leaders said, we know better than our central bankers. So we're going to get rid of the ones we have and put in ones who will do what we want short term. Short term, and I mean like 5 minutes, it can work. But in long term, in some of those countries I mentioned, they're seeing 300% inflation. Now, if you remember just a few short years ago, when we had 9% inflation, people were pulling their hair out, lighting their hair on fire, saying it's the end of the world, saying it's economic Armageddon. Well, imagine how you'd feel with 300% inflation. Do we know that's what we're going to get if Powell is removed from office and Trump puts in his own henchmen, willing to simply take orders from the White House? No, but if you look at evidence and what's going on in the rest of the world, that things like that are the logical result of giving the levers of the money of the Fed Reserve to a president who's only thinking about what's in his own short-term interest.
Imagine having a communication coach who never sleeps. Meet your new secret weapon, the TJ Walker AI clone. Go to tjwalker.ai and start getting custom coaching 24/7. No scheduling, no hourly fees. I've trained presidents, prime ministers, and Fortune 500 CEOs. But the same exact communication I've delivered to world leaders is now available to you online, anytime at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Whether you're speaking on camera, pitching a client, or handling a crisis, you need these tools. These aren't fluffy motivational videos. They're practical, battle-tested techniques to help you speak clearly, competently, and persuasively. Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com and take your communication to the next level. Got feedback or a question for me? I actually read them, and if you send one, I'll send you a free mini course as a thank you. Just head to tjwalker.com/feedback.
Thanks for joining me. I'm TJ Walker. This is Filtered. If you're new to the show, welcome. Thanks for joining me. I do appreciate you being here with us. We're going to hop into this next issue in just a moment. But first, a note about the show and about me. Why, who am I? Why am I here? Why are you listening to me or watching me? So my name is TJ Walker, and for 40 years, I have worked with billionaire fund managers, CEOs, business leaders from all over the world, as well as presidents, prime ministers, Nobel Peace Prize winners, the occasional Miss Universe, on their personal development skills, specifically their communication skills. So I bring that deep level of expertise right here to you. So rather than working one-on-one with a prime minister or a political leader or a billionaire fund manager, I'm essentially working with you, showing you what's going on behind the scenes, the messaging, the crafting, all with the goal of helping to improve you. I'm not trying to be just yet another political pundit, a Fox News commentator or an MSNBC or CNN commentator. That's not really the goal. My main interest is business stories, economic technology stories, and culture stories. Unfortunately, we do live in a world where, because of the current political situation, almost every business story, economic technology story is flowing from politics. So it leaves me no choice. That leads us to our next story here. There is growing consensus in America that we are reaching a full-fledged fascist state. I don't use that term lightly, and I'm well aware that with some of you, the mere mention of that word ends the discussion. Click bye-bye. In today's New York Times, Michelle Goldberg, one of their opinion columnists, writes, I think, a very thought-provoking article saying that, 10 years ago, we heard from so many people that Donald Trump's a fascist, Donald Trump's a fascist. And they were written off as extremists. They were written off as hysterical. And many political scientists and others said, no, it's technically incorrect to refer to Donald Trump as a fascist because fascists are so ambitious that they want to take over other countries. Whereas Donald Trump essentially said during his first term, hey, I don't want to be the world's policeman. Let's get rid of the wars. I'm not going to be waging war. And he largely followed that. Additionally, fascists tend to have their own secret police and use their own secret police to just start harassing, detaining, eliminating, torturing, removing political adversaries. And as far as we know, Donald Trump really didn't do that in his first term. So that's why most mainstream commentators during the first Trump administration, during his time out of office, even during a lot of his first term, shied away from using the word fascist. I tried not to use it very much because it's so inflammatory. It scares people. It makes the person using the term seem extremist. Well, Michelle Goldberg makes an extraordinarily compelling case that these extremists were actually right. Deep down, all along, Donald Trump was a fascist, he is a fascist, and he's now acting like a fascist. Because it is fascistic to say, I don't like this political leader, let me take him out, put my own team in. I want this land, Greenland, I'm going to take it any way I want. We are increasingly seeing the president do the sorts of fascistic things that other fascist leaders did. And the increasingly emboldened ICE strikes many political scientists and objective observers as quite similar to the secret police used by fascist regimes. Especially when you analyze the rhetoric coming out of the White House just this week on a couple of fronts. I want to bring your attention to some of these things. Donald Trump now said essentially, this woman, Good, who was killed, some say murdered, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, her crime was she was disrespectful. So according to Trump, I mean, this is the president of the United States, essentially is saying that if you're disrespectful to his secret police, you deserve to lose your life. I'm sorry, friends, that's not something I've ever heard Ronald Reagan say, or any of the Bushes, or Mitt Romney, or any Republican, or any conservative in America. That is something you see from dictators, fascists, and monarchs. And he said it earlier this week. So this is a real problem, folks. It really is. We are seeing in category after category of civil life, norms of democracy, norms of due process just stripped away, thrown away. And increasingly, it's all about will. What is the will of this dear leader? Now, it just doesn't matter if you're focusing on North Korea, Germany from another century, Italy from another century. When an entire society and its governmental apparatus is mobilized towards enhancing the will of one individual, it's not democracy. You can quibble over whether you want to call it fascism or anything else, but it's certainly not democracy. It's not republicanism either. It's not representative Republican democracy. It's not rule of law. It's rule of will, one person's will. The other thing we're seeing that's, again, very similar to what happens in fascist societies. There's been an announcement that the FBI is launching an investigation into the woman who was killed in Minneapolis, into her backgrounds. They're combing through her background to see if there's any association with anything that might seem radical. If they found it, they haven't mentioned it yet. Oh my goodness, maybe she gave a $5 donation to Acorn in 1991. Wow, there you have it, folks. She deserved to die. The other big theme that's coming out from a number of our government officials and their supporters is this woman deserved to die simply because she protested. If you are criticizing this administration, if you are peacefully protesting, then you get what's coming to you. That is the message that's coming through loud and clear. And I'm sorry, folks, but that's what fascism does. Remember, it's not extremism if it's based in fact. You're an extremist if you just make up stuff. If I just say, J.D. Vance is so bad, he murdered JFK. If I say that, that's extremist, and it's also stupid. He wasn't alive when JFK was shot. So that's extremist rhetoric, but it's stupid because it's not plausibly based in any fact. When more and more serious political scientists, objective observers, commentators on our society, experts on democracy are saying, look, we are now in full-fledged fascist territory with what this administration is doing, it's based on fact. It's not just a feeling. It's not just, oh, I don't like this guy's orange makeup or his bad hair. It's not about feelings anymore. It's about actual actions. The other thing that fascists do repeatedly around the globe is they start to rejigger all the rules for elections because they realize it seems a little too cute to some people if you just say, okay, democracy was great. Thanks for voting for me. But that's it. I'm now ruler for life. Fascists don't do that. Viktor Orban doesn't do that. Even Vladimir Putin doesn't do that. They still go through the showmanship, the play acting of having elections. But they start to change the rules. They start to shut down media organizations that criticize them. They start to harass leading officials, start arresting, they start disappearing. I mean, that's exactly, you can call him a left-wing dictator, but it's fascistic as well. That's what Maduro did. I mean, he got rid of his primary opponent, the woman who just won the Nobel Peace Prize. People wanted her to be president. He made it illegal for her to run. And I think that's what we are going to see President Trump do this year, folks, 2026. This is a big year because this is the year when there is an election for 33 senators and all the members of Congress and the House, and the Democrats really only need a handful. They take over. Once they take over, a lot of Trump's nonsense will be over. Not all of it. He still has tremendous power as president, but they are going to be able to stop a lot of this, a lot of these constitutional atrocities, if the Democrats gain power. And certainly, they can spend every minute of every day holding hearings to impeach him. Now, they're not going to convict him in the Senate because even if the Democrats gain a majority of the Senate, they're not going to get the 2/3 they need for any kind of conviction. I mean, I don't care how many crimes it's obvious Trump is convicted. I certainly don't anticipate more than a couple of Republican senators voting to convict him of any impeachment. But certainly the whole political dynamic will change next year if the Democrats take control of the House, and really changes if they control the Senate. So Donald Trump is doing what fascist leaders do. He's trying to change the rules. He's putting his thumb on the scale. Part of that is by asking places like Texas and other conservative states, Indiana, to change all the rules for the congressional districts, to rewrite them, blatantly gerrymandering in his favor. Yes, I understand Democrats have gerrymandered too, but there's been a broad-based consensus that you rewrite the rules once every 10 years, not every year to help some particular politician get a short-term advantage. So there's that, which arguably isn't completely unconstitutional, but sleazy and unethical, to say the least. There's also the issue of him trying to change the census data to no longer take into account people who live in states who aren't citizens, for factoring in the Electoral College and how congressional seats are divvied up. So there's that. But by far the biggest concern is him simply using his henchmen, his own paramilitary, his ICE officials, in two ways. One, election day. I mean, what is to prevent Donald Trump from saying, I hear we have evidence that there's widespread fraud and there are thousands of illegal immigrants voting illegally in, and then he just names cities where Democrats tend to have a lot of voters, but that are in swing states. So if he can somehow eliminate inner city voting tabs, he can win the state. If you think that's an impossibility, you have not been paying attention. So that's one obvious way he could completely sway the election. He could lose, frankly, in a landslide, but because Democratic votes are so concentrated in a handful of states and a handful of cities and swing states, by sending in the troops, saying, oh, we have evidence there's a terrorist attempt to take over the election booth. Radical leftists have bribed people into giving them their IDs and they're going to vote. So we're going to be there with machine guns, slowly checking every ID. We're going to take an hour to check everyone's ID. Oops, polls closed. Sorry, 99% of you Democrats didn't get to vote. It's extraordinarily easy for me to see that happening. That in and of itself could make it so that the Democrats could win 10 million more votes than the Republicans in House races and still not gain control of the House. Next, we have the issue of actually voting, counting the votes. Let's say it's election night. Votes come in, and lo and behold, the Democrats are up by 20 seats. Yeah, some slim margins. There were a number of seats where the Democrat only won by 1-2 points, swing districts, but hey, they're in control come January 2027. They won by 20 seats. Okay, time out. What's to prevent Donald Trump from sending in the Justice Department, sending in ICE, sending in the U.S. military saying, I have allegations that there was voter fraud in North Carolina, in Atlanta, Georgia. And he goes through the swing states. We have evidence. We are seizing the voting booths. We're seizing the ballot boxes. And my team will count. Who's going to stop him? Oh, some lower level judge will. Right. And then it goes to appeals. And how often does Trump lose an appeal? Less than 10% of the time. So that's another way he can control the Congress, control power, and stay in office. He can simply, both before the election, on election day, and after the election, before the votes have been fully counted, he can use the full power of his paramilitary to decide the election. So, folks, this is no longer an extreme crackpot theory. This is no longer a slur saying, oh, Donald Trump's kind of fascist. Ha, ha, ha. It's not a joke anymore. Because he's showing all the tendencies. Again, arguably you could make a case that calling him a fascist in his first term was overblown rhetoric. Hey, this guy's not going around invading other countries, talking about grabbing more countries, saying the world is his. He's not doing that. This isn't a guy saying he can do whatever he wants just based on what he wants. This isn't a guy arresting anyone who criticizes him. He might mock them or file a lawsuit against them, but he's doing things in a way that others have done. You can't say that anymore because he's in fact doing all of those things. And to deny the fact that he's obviously behaving like a textbook fascist is to deny reality. Now, you may say, okay, maybe he is, but I like him. He's my fascist. We need a fascist. I mean, that can be your argument. All I would ask you to do is be honest. You and people you support should run on that platform. Let's see how that works.
Imagine having a communication coach who never sleeps. Meet your new secret weapon, the TJ Walker AI clone. Go to tjwalker.ai and start getting custom coaching 24/7. No scheduling, no hourly fees. I've trained presidents, prime ministers, and Fortune 500 CEOs. But the same exact communication I've delivered to world leaders is now available to you online, anytime at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Whether you're speaking on camera, pitching a client, or handling a crisis, you need these tools. These aren't fluffy motivational videos. They're practical, battle-tested techniques to help you speak clearly, confidently, and persuasively. Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com and take your communication to the next level.
No more politics. I like to end every show on something positive and upbeat that will actually help you be more successful, because that is the thesis of this show. Filtered with TJ Walker is about looking at top stories of the day, business world, technology world, culture, analyzing them, filtering them through the lens of communication skills, personal development skills, so that you can be more successful in your personal life as well as your professional life. That is my mission for you here. Now, I end each show by taking a question from you on some aspect of personal development. These questions come from my students. I do have 12 million student enrollments in my courses from every nation in the world other than, I believe, North Korea. Okay, this question comes from Abdul. He is a student in my course, the Complete Storytelling course for speaking and presenting. Question is, how can personal stories make technical presentations easier to understand? Well, just think of when Steve Jobs introduced the iPod. He said, I told my daughter, imagine reaching in your pocket and pulling out 1,000 songs. Instantly, he made everyone understand why an iPod would be helpful. Instead of lugging around 1,000 CDs or 1,000 albums, you could have it all on this little bitty iPod. Personal story. It didn't take long. Human beings relate to other human beings. So anytime you can relate something to a personal story that's real and authentic, that's interesting to your audience, it's going to be better. So here's the thing I want you to think about. This may sound confusing at first. There's no such thing as a technical presentation. There's no such thing as a financial presentation or a PowerPoint presentation. These don't really exist in the minds of our audience. They exist in our mind as speakers, presenters, experts, business executives. But the audience has a different perspective. The audience is only asking one question. Is this an interesting presentation that I should pay attention to, that's relevant to me? Or is it boring? Should I ignore it? That's the only thing the audience is asking. So everything you do needs to be about how can you put an idea in front of your audience, make it as understandable as possible, as interesting to them so they see the relevance, and then tell stories to make it more understandable and memorable for them. And a personal story is going to make it more memorable if you have one. And sometimes the personal story is you simply recounting a conversation you had with one other colleague in your office. It doesn't have to be a dramatic story. It doesn't have to be, blinded on the road to Damascus. It doesn't have to be that compelling. It just needs to slow things down, introduce a character, tell a problem, a solution, how you felt, and how it was all resolved. So Abdul, I'm wishing you well and good luck on all of your future presentations. I'm TJ Walker. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you tomorrow.